Pleased to welcome you to this remote meeting of the Council. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. And this will include the instant messaging. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening.
No.
Councillor Mackay, I reserve my right to record.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mackay. I will now explain how the meeting will be conducted this evening. My role as the chairman of the meeting will continue. However, the responsibility for managing the meeting has been temporarily assigned to the Democratic Electoral Service Manager, who I will refer to as a facilitator. This officer will now steer the debate. He will merely assist in implementing the remote meeting protocols. A Democratic Service Officer is with us to produce the minutes and to provide advice as required. I will provide further explanation as we proceed through the agenda, but members are reminded that instant messaging will visible to those viewing the meeting and must only be used for raising technical issues, indicating they wish to speak, raising a point of order, or seconding a motion. I now ask the facilitator to take the attendance register by reading out the list of council members in alphabetical orders. Members should confirm their attendance by answering present.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Councillor Bartlett.
Present.
Councillor Blackmore.
Present.
Councillor Bryce.
Present.
Councillor Brindle.
Present.
Councillor David Burton.
Present.
Councillor Matt Burton.
Present.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Cox.
Present.
Councillor Cumming.
Present.
Councillor Daly.
Present.
Councillor English.
Present.
Councillor Eaves.
Present.
Councillor Fermor.
Present.
Councillor Fissenden. And I still can't see Councillor Fissenden in the list, so I assume she's absent. Councillor Fort.
Present.
Councillor Garland.
Present.
Councillor Garton.
Good evening, and I'm present.
Councillor Gooch. Councillor Gooch. Okay, it doesn't look like Councillor Gooch is currently connected to the meeting, although she's showing on the list. Julie, would you like to try contacting her for me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey. Oh, I've jumped, sorry. Councillor Grigg.
Present.
Councillor Harper.
Present.
Councillor Hasty. And again, I think
Present.
oh, she is here. Welcome, Councillor Hasty. Councillor Hinder. Councillor Hinder.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Joy.
Present.
Councillor Cadwell.
Present. Present.
Councillor Kimmins.
Present.
Councillor Lewins.
Present.
Councillor Mackay.
Present.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Present, if you can hear me.
I can hear you. Thank you. Councillor Mortimer.
Present.
Councillor Munford.
Present.
Councillor Nagy.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Newton. Councillor Parfitt-Reid.
Present.
Councillor Perry,
Present.
Councillor Powell,
Present.
Councillor Pearl,
Present, yes.
thank you.
Someone's got their mic open.
Yeah, it's Councillor Gooch. Councillor Gooch,
I'm sorry. I've really messed up somehow. Sorry about that. I am present.
excellent, thank you. Councillor Ring, I really hope you're here.
Present.
Councillor Robertson,
Present.
we have apologies from Councillor D. Rose. So Councillor Margaret Rose,
Present.
Councillor Round,
Present.
Councillor Janetta Sams,
Present.
Councillor Tom Sams,
Present.
Councillor Spooner,
Present.
thank you. Councillor Springett,
Present.
Councillor Vizard,
Present.
Councillor Webb,
Present.
Councillor de Wigadeen Shepherd.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Wilby. Councillor Young,
Present.
thank you. That concludes the member attendance. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I will now ask the facilitator to read out the list of officers present.
Thank you. In attendance tonight, we have Alison Broom, Chief Executive, William Cornell, Director of Regeneration and Place, Mark Green, Director of Finance and Business Improvement, Steve McGuinness, Mid-Kent Services Director, Patricia Narrabor, Head of Legal Partnership, Angela Woodhouse, Head of Policy, Communications and Governance, myself, Ryan O'Connell, Democratic Electoral Services Manager as the facilitator, Debbie Snook, Democratic Services Officer as the Clerk for Council. Thank you. Or I've just been informed that Councillor Fissenden is in the room. So Councillor Fissenden, can you confirm that you are present?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello, you can hear me? Yes, I am.
can. Excellent. Nice to hear you.
Good.
Thank you, Ryan. Prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Steve Price, Vicar of All Saints Lewes. But before the prayers, I'm sure you would join me in observing a minute's silence in the memory of all those in the borough and surrounding area who have lost their lives due to the COVID-19, including Mr. Mark Radford, Chief Executive of Swell Borough Council, who many of us will have known. Thank you. Now I ask Reverend Price to start with his prayers.
Reverend Price, can you hear me? Reverend Price, can you hear me?
There we are. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. So
You're up.
did you hear the beginning or should I start again?
If you could start again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, firstly, huge thank you. A privilege, of course, to be thanking God for your tireless service as councillors and officers, which no doubt in this time is even tougher. And praying, of course, for your decision making. I'm going to just start with a verse from Scripture, from the book of Proverbs. And this is what that God has said to us. He says this: many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. With that in mind, let's pray together, shall we? Heavenly Father, I want to thank you and praise you for these councillors and officers who give up their time to serve us as a community. Father, particularly a role where whatever decision, no doubt, in our current culture of sharp criticism and slow to praise can be tireless and exhausting and probably at times disheartening. Lord, I pray that you would lift their hearts, that they'd be aware as they serve us and our community that this is not unnoticed. But I want to commit tonight their decision-making process. Father, that verse just reminds us that we might have many plans, but you are a sovereign God, that no plan that we make, nothing that happens is outside of your control. There are no emergency committee meetings in heaven. Not one thing that happens is outside of your expectation. So Lord, I do pray for them as they make their decisions. I pray for great wisdom, the time when no doubt they face financial constraints, demands on services, the uncertainty of life with COVID-19, a virus that we don't know what it's going to do next. When there are pressures on our economy locally and nationally, when the effects of Brexit are perhaps unknown. But I pray especially for those in the strategic planning and infrastructure committees, the housing and environment, the crime and disorder, all affected by these factors. And Father, I want to pray too for those in our community affected by COVID-19. Particularly, we remember the family and friends of Mark Ford, that we were just remembering. But Lord, there will be others for whom we know and for whom this is a difficult and sad time as they remember their loved ones. Father, I commit this meeting to you and to your sovereign care. And with the words that Paul wrote to the Romans, I'll finish this prayer. Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable his judgments and his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Apologies. I will now ask the facilitator to read out the list of apologies received, please.
Thank you. We have received apologies from councillors Harwood, Newton, Daniel Rose and Wilby. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies for anybody? No, thank you. Item 3 of the agenda, application for dispensations. Are there any application for dispensations? I would like to address this to the head of legal partnership.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no applications for dispensation which have been received from members, so no. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosure of disposable peculiar interests, other significant interests by members? Take that as a no. Are there any disclosures by officers? No. Now we'll go to item 5. Disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No, thank you. Item 6. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Lovely, thank you.
Agreed.
We will now go to item 7, minutes of the meeting of the Borough Council held on the 26th of February 2020. So page 1. Two, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, so can I take this? Minutes are agreed and the minutes will be signed at a correct record at a later date.
Agreed.
Thank you, everybody. Item 8, Mayor's announcement. Oh, what a peculiar time. It is nice to stay on, and I know Faye's going to make a great deputy and a fantastic mayor next year, but hopefully things get a little bit better soon and we can start meeting all again and hardly seeing people's faces would be nice. So that's about all I've got to say at the moment, but yeah, we'll all talk again soon. So on to item 9, petitions. There are no petitions this evening. Item 10, question and answer session for members of the public. I have received notification that Mr. Stuart Jeffrey wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, hi. Given the Council's stated anti-idling campaign, has the Council adopted the powers provided by Regulation 12 of the Road Traffic Act, brackets vehicle emissions, brackets fixed penalty, brackets England Regulations 2002, to enforce switching off of engines when vehicles are stationary on the road?
Madam
Switching
Mayor,
off of engines when vehicles are stationary on the road.
Yeah, Councillor Burton, if you could respond, please. We just need to sort something out with the Mayor. Will you do so?
thank you, and thank you, Mr. Jeffries. The Council, through the Low Emission Strategy Working Group, considered the adoption of the powers to control idling vehicles, but found the current legislative framework impractical. The offensive is one of leaving your engine idling unnecessarily. The key issue being able to prove the driver was idling unnecessarily and how that could be interpreted if, for example, a driver wants to leave his engine idling for the heating in cold weather or the air conditioning in hot weather. We have, however, worked with organisations like the taxi trade and bus company representatives, and through our programme of working at Clean Air with Schools, to actually promote the measure of idling engines being switched off wherever possible, and our work in encouraging this will be ongoing. And dare I say, the ever-increasing number of electric vehicles do circumnavigate the need for this. Is there a supplementary question?
Yes. So given that over 1,000 people have died since the legislation was introduced in 2002, and the implication of air pollution in exacerbating COVID infections, does the council agree that it should have done more, including enacting their powers, as other English councils have now done? Yes. So given that,
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. I'm sure we could have a very detailed debate about that statistic that you refer to, which is an extrapolation of the contribution of air quality to deaths rather than outright deaths caused by the aforesaid. I think there's always more that we can do, and we will continue to work to promote the issues of air quality, to bring forward policy wherever possible, such in our local plan, converting technical planning guidance into actual policy that will be enforceable, to support all and any practical measures to improve the air quality for the residents of our borough.
Mr. Jeffries, I'm ever so sorry, and Councillor Burton, it was my fault. I pressed the wrong button. But I was meant to ask if was there any the leader or leaders would like to come in and to answer Mr. Stewart's questions after you, Councillor Burton. So are there any of the leaders want to respond?
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I would like Keith Atkinson to respond on behalf of the Labour Group.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So it's a bit disappointing that the council thought it was going to be unworkable and didn't know how you could enforce it and how you'd interpret the law. I mean, if you go to somewhere like the taxi rank at King Street, anywhere where a bus stands, or a level crossing such as the one at East Farley, it's easy enough to see people sitting there with their engines idling, and it'd be very easy to interpret that as not being in accordance with the law. So I'm disappointed that we actually haven't enforced this. So that's my response anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other group leaders wishing to answer? No, I take that as a no. So thank you, Mr. Jeffries, for your questions, and thank you, Councillor Burton, for coming back. Right. I've received notification that Ms. Kate Hammond wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee. Go ahead, Ms. Hammond.
Okay, thank you. In January, you told us you had written to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government about Maidstone's housing numbers. You made various press releases about the efforts Maidstone are doing challenging the national government's housing numbers. You then took nearly 6 months to write again because your first letter never arrived. How can we have confidence in your ability to negotiate housing numbers if we don't have confidence in you being able to deliver a letter?
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Would you like to respond?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's good to hear you back again.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond, thank you very much for your question, although I don't really agree with the content of it. The suggestion that the council didn't chase the letter to MHCMLG for almost 6 months is not correct. Following the initial letter to the Secretary of State, which was signed, I believe, by all the leaders, on the 20th of January this year, the sequence of follow-up approaches to government was as follows. On the 17th of February, a follow-up via the Secretary of State's private secretary by Helen Grant MP on the Council's behalf was made. On the 2nd of April, we chased with an email to MHCLD, Director of Planning. On the 1st of May, further chasing of emails to MHCLG was made. 3rd of June, further letter to the Secretary of State from myself. It was then that we were told that they had lost the letter. Chasing the letter once again, which we reissued to them. On the 24th of June, further chasing letter to the Secretary of State's private secretary was made. A meeting is now going to be held, or scheduled, I should be saying, on the 16th of July, which is actually tomorrow. So your remark saying that I can't even follow up a letter or deliver it, I think was what you said, I'm afraid is incorrect. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other leaders or their representative like to answer this question?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Faye Gooch here, just to support what the leader has just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Madam Mayor, can I just say a few words, please? Yeah, I think it's an extremely good question. And when we look at when that letter was actually kind of first signed and sent, it was some months ago. It's easy, I suppose, to go back now and say that it should have been done earlier, or even a letter of that sort of magnitude should have been hand-delivered. But I can understand where the question comes from, given that there are so many people that are worried in that particular area and beyond. And whilst it might just be an administration error within Maidstone Council, it certainly isn't as far as those residents are concerned. So I'm fully supportive of the question that was asked. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I call upon John Perry. Where you gone, John?
You've muted yourself, John.
Sorry, I've muted myself. I'll start again. I wanted to just support what Councillor Cox has said, because I don't think the impression should be given that nothing has been done. A lot has been done to chase this, and a lot of us on a personal basis have taken this up with our MP, and we continually raise this with her. And I know, as Councillor Cox has said, it's being pursued as well centrally from Maidstone. So a lot is being done. I mean, the question's a very good one, and I fully understand why you raised it, but be reassured, a lot has been done to chase this up. Many thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Miss Hammond, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Chairman of Policy and Resource Committee arising out of your original question or the reply?
Yes, please, if I can.
Please go ahead.
The Ministry, we FOI'd the Ministry of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government. They are the ones that told us that they have no paper or electronic records or correspondence with the Council on housing matters in the first 5 months of the year. I take what the people have sort of said so far. My question is, how can we believe Maidstone is serious in reducing the numbers, given that what we've seen so far, they haven't been very active in the last 6 months?
Thank you. Again, we'll start with Councillor Cox, and any other group leaders, would you kindly let me know if you wish to reply as well?
In anticipation of getting a meeting with MHCLG and the appropriate officer or minister, we have had various officers looking at potential ways and things that we might highlight at such a meeting. We've even brought those to the attention of our MP, as Councillor Perry has said. We are working on this and everything else that we as a council have to do throughout these times, and also to maintain the pressure on the local plan review. These are all part and parcel of our intention to try everything we can to reduce the figures, and therefore the meeting that will happen tomorrow should produce some response. And I hope it's response that, unlike the reply that we had, will actually be positive and not just reminding us of things that we already knew. So please be absolutely assured, every person and every councillor and every officer, that we are making every effort to make this possible and to get to the right people who will be able to make a decision, hopefully in our favour, because that is why we're bothering. Thank you.
Any other group leaders? No, thank you. Thank you, Miss Healy, for your Miss Hammond, for your questions tonight. Thank you. I have received notification that Mr. Steve Healy wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of the Policy Resource Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, members. My question is, we were pleased to note that your second letter to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government about Maidstone's housing numbers was sent on the 3rd of June by post as well as by email this time. You asked for a sensible conversation with civil servants about housing numbers no later than the 30th of June. Can you please update us on how successful your conversations have been?
Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The meeting was requested, but sadly not held before the 30th of June. It's scheduled, as I pointed out now, for the 16th of July and will be held with MHCLG officers. So whilst we're not in control of MHCLG diaries, the fact that we have now are able to have this dialogue is positive, and we will be using it constructively in order to explore any and all potential mechanisms of reducing the pressures that current housing target is placed upon the borough. I can't stress this anymore. We did send the letter. Even the first one, Mr. Healy, went by post. We pushed the boat out and put a stamp on it.
Thank you. Any other group leaders wishing to reply?
If I could say something, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, sure.
Particularly as this might be the last chance to actually answer or respond to a public question.
Hear, hear.
I do have a lot of sympathy with officers of the council sending letters, drafting letters. We all signed it as leaders of our groups. But quite frankly, we are a district council. The government have a policy. The policy, they will say, applies to every district and borough council. Our letter in there, it probably ranks just above junk mail as far as the government is concerned. They're not going to make an exception, I doubt, for Maidstone. I hope you are successful in your negotiations, but I wouldn't hold my breath. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
That is in response to both questions from Kate Hammond and Steve Healy.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, can I just follow up on basically what I've said earlier on? Again, it's another extremely valid question from Mr. Healy, and it's just a statement, really. Can we actually learn from this, kind of moving forward? And if we haven't got a response from a letter to whoever it may be within, say, 4 weeks, can we make that follow up and not make that and not wait 5 months, as that freedom of information suggested? I was quite horrified then when I heard that. But that's just a statement, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I would now ask Mr. Healy, do you wish to ask a supplementary question of the Chairman of the Policy and Resource Committee arising out of your original question or reply?
Yes, I do, please, Madam Mayor.
Please go ahead.
So it looks like the civil service haven't taken any notice of your letters They've taken little notice of your emails. They've not taken any notice of the fact that you asked for a meeting before the 30th of June. So what demands are you going to actually make tomorrow at the civil service, at the ministry, and what do you actually expect them to take any notice of?
Councillor Cox?
We will be, I don't wish to put this out in open forum now, because we have given these to MHCLG prior to the meeting, and I intend to hear what they have to say to those, and I don't think it's correct that we put those out in the public. We will give those out, the responses and the questions that we've levelled to those ministers or the secretaries. It won't be the ministers, we know that. So it will be officer to officer meeting tomorrow, and I hope they will give responses. We have not got a list as long as your arm. We have gone with 3 key objectives because we believe we are only given a 1-hour slot, and therefore we wanted to be as striking as we could and prescriptive as we could, because they need to understand the local issues that we have and also the local figures that we're being asked to work with. And therefore, pretty much from those 2 parts of the statement, you can guess or see where we're going to be asking the questions. I will assure you, and actually I'm going to make sure that Mr. Powell, Councillor Powell, gets the copies of each one of the letters and emails that we have sent, because I can assure everybody that we haven't left it 6 months. So I will supply those. I will print off, get copies printed off, and if there's a problem with the post, I will even drop them round to his house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Are there any the other group leaders that wish to say anything?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fay. No, no one else has indicated. So I thank all our people that from the public that asked questions tonight, and thank you very much. There are no questions from members of the council to the chairman of committees. So I'd go on to item 12. I call upon the Leader of the Council to submit his report on current issues. Councillor Cox, you may speak for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm glad that we've taken time to reflect and remember residents and co-workers that have been lost not only to COVID-19, but also to other ailments. Our thoughts as councillors and residents are with each and every one of them and their families. We must also add our support and thanks, not only to the NHS, but to all emergency services and also our own staff who stepped up in these troubled times. And I mustn't stop there, because I must also praise and give thanks to all the parishes, residents and volunteers that have offered support throughout the borough to their local communities. When we first went into lockdown way back in March, the central government asked Maidstone Borough Council and Kent County Council to set up local hubs to offer support to those who were on a list of over 5,500 residents that were asked to stay at home and who were being shielded from this pandemic. This is when we established the Food Hub and associated departments around our organisation to figure out from scratch how to evolve a suitable and deliverable system that could function in what would turn out to be unprecedented times. Initially, the problem of sourcing food and basic items of weekly shopping for households on our growing list would prove to be harder than you might think. Our hub staff included members of the mayoral support, democratic services, debt collection, civil enforcement, procurement, marketing staff, and they all worked so well together for the common cause. Then to distribution. We had offers from local residents, councillors, and indeed the Rotary clubs of Maidstone. Over the period of the total lockdown, we have supported directly or signposted around 1,500 cases. We've delivered over 1,200 food parcels. The residents and parishes, restaurants, church groups have cooked many thousands of hot meals to support those in need. And during all of this, local charities have carried on their support in our borough and have indeed offered us support through the hub. I will mention food banks, Make a Difference to Maidstone, Maidstone Day Centre, Involve, Mid-Kent College, Citizens Advice Bureau, Maidstone Children's Centres, and even Golding Homes, who provided staff for our COVID phone lines. I could go on, but to all of those, you know who you are, and I say on behalf of us all a big thank you. Central government have given financial support directly to help these measures of assistance, and in their first tranche of support, they gave us £57,000. We were then given around 1.9 million to cover directly to cover our support for our central budgets. However, with these estimates now in the region of 8 million missing from our income, we wait with interest and fingers crossed that they will come back to back up one of their first statements. Do whatever is necessary. We will be there to support you. Our budgets were set back in December and were then passed by full council in February. It was a balanced budget that relies on our income stream to support the income from council tax. We were encouraged by the virtual to be self-funding and not to be required to look after budgeting from central government. In fact, we have demands in the future to give central coffers an estimated 1.6 million a year from our income. We formed a COVID recovery consultative forum that is politically balanced to prepare the way ahead. We're looking at the work being done by the Kent Resilience Forum and will consider and adopt where we see appropriate and economically achievable a positive way forward. We must consider ways to help the economic recovery of our borough, and we must not lose sight of the ability to progress with our strategic plan. However, modifying the way we work and function as an organisation should never be far from our radar. I believe we must adapt, adopt and improve. This may well mean investing now to prepare for the future. I realise that 2020 may well not be seen in a positive light, but I can tell you all that with us all working together for the good of our residents and the future of Maidstone, the light at the end of the tunnel is getting closer with every passing day. Thank you to each and every one of you who will pull in the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cox. I just want to echo a lot of what you said. I mean, I think we're in total agreement in most of the things you've highlighted. And I also like to give my condolences, I'm sure all our group, for the people who have lost close relatives and friends in this terrible pandemic. It is interesting, I think, that this is the first real pandemic. I've lived through quite a few scares, Asian flu and various other ones, but this is the first real pandemic for over 100 years. And I think one of the things we found, and I think we've all found, is that we are working and have been in uncharted territory. And I think everybody, we've had to sort of learn as we go along. And one of the things I think that's come out of this, and I really would like to emphasize it, is the working relationships between local communities, parishes, and you've mentioned that, and I think that's been very strong, and Maidstone Borough Council as well. I think Maidstone Borough Council have behaved superbly in this, actually. I think they carried out a very difficult task extremely well, and I think officers have been very flexible in the way they've worked, but also it's their relationship with the local communities. And I think this is why this has worked very, very well. I know in my own community, we have a very strong parish council. We have very strong church groups as well. And they have all worked with Maidstone Borough Council. And I think that's strengthened. And if anything, I think it's good that comes out of this. I think that's one of the things that has come out of all this. The other thing I wanted to say is I think we can't ignore, and you've mentioned this, the financial position we're in. Clearly, we are there's calls on our reserves, and I think we got to look at this very carefully. And I know our officers and our finance director will be reporting back on this. But this is an extremely, I think, difficult area, and that's something we're going to have to address at some time. We may well have to prioritise, we may have to make quite difficult decisions, and certainly I think, as you said, we'll have to address the way we work in the future. And I think one other thing that's come out of this, and I know the technology does play us up from time to time, but I think actually a lot of our meetings I think can continue to be held virtually. I think this is something that we're learning obviously all the time, but I think group meetings, I mean some committee meetings may continue to be worked on a virtual basis, and I think this is something, obviously using the technology is something again that's good that's come out of this. So we are in difficult times, we're in very strange times, but I think like you, I do see some light at the end of the tunnel, and I think as a council and as a community and Maidstone and the whole borough, I think everybody has worked very closely together, and I really personally appreciate that, and I think it shows the borough in a very, very good light. And I'd like to thank everybody involved, because it's been a difficult times, I know, for a lot of people. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Mrs. Gooch, leader of the Independent Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really must echo the very eloquent speeches that the leader and Councillor John Perry have just said. Thank you both for speaking so well on behalf of this council. And I have to say, I've been very proud of the way that the council has worked together. Councillors have worked together. And in addition to that, it's really brought out the best in us, not just councillors. I think it's brought out the best in our charities, in the parish councils, in our residents. I've just been blown away by the way people have responded. And what's important is that we don't lose that. We must make the best of the wonderful relationships that we have made, that we have strengthened. I think, as the leader said, the future, that's going to be pretty hard. There will be a new normal. We are working towards it. And I very much hope that we can carry this togetherness and respect. I hope that goes with us forwards. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. I'd like to call upon Councillor Mackay, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I ask Paul Harper on behalf of the Labour Group to respond?
Okay.
Thank you. On behalf of the Labour Group, we would also like to thank all the residents of Maidstone for the way they've responded in terms of the coronavirus since March. I think we've been an area of exemplary cooperation by the residents, and as a result, I think compared to a lot of some of our neighbouring towns and boroughs, Maidstone is coming through this as a community in a better situation than a lot of other places. I also, in addition to thanking the key workers Martin outlined, I think on behalf of Labour especially, we would also like to thank our public transport workers, and especially the bus workers who have put their lives on the line every single day of this crisis to ensure that public transport is functioning around Maidstone and around the whole UK, and they still continue to. We all will be passing buses every day of the week. And the same goes really for our shop workers. We all require the shops, especially food shops and supermarkets and our corner shops, and they've done a remarkable work in terms of continuing. And I think it shows in a lot of places the resilience of actually where we do have corner shops and neighbourhood shops, because residents have really been talking to me about how well our local community shops have handled this crisis. I think Maidstone Council has done well. We've heard a lot tonight, and I think we're like effectively a beacon council. I think we've exemplified what is best in terms of how a community and its authority can respond to this crisis. And I think as councillors, we owe a debt of gratitude to all of our staff, wherever they may be, or whatever department they are, for all the work they put in to keep our community going. Without a refuse service and a street cleansing service, who knows where on earth we would have been within the first 2 weeks of this crisis. And they're still there, and our streets and our dustbins and so on are collected every week, far better than some other local authorities' responses. Probably like a lot of councillors, I had to attend a funeral only very recently, last week, and my heart goes out to people who have lost loved ones and close relatives and friends. Going to a funeral where you are literally only allowed 12 mourners is a very, well, it's an awful experience. I went to celebrate the life of a person I'd known all my life, and literally other than the immediate family, only me and my sister were able to attend. And I can imagine that repeated around the country must be awful for families not being able to take part in the grieving process. And one hopes that perhaps at the end of this, lots of families will be able to have ceremonies of thanksgiving when they can actually invite all their friends and colleagues and so on to celebrate the life of people. We ourselves know that when this is all over, we wish to do the same for Wendy Hinder. We've not been able to do that properly yet as a council. And we all really want to support Bob and actually be able to celebrate Wendy's life. And I just think, you know, light will come at the end of the tunnel. As chair of ERL and also working with Martin, the discretionary grants we've given out in Maidstone have really helped around 300 local businesses and charities to survive through this crisis. Without that support, they would not necessarily have got there. And I think our approach, as John earlier referred to, in terms of coming out of lockdown, has been exemplary. We're working really well with residents and communities to actually move Maidstone back to as much of a normality as possible. But obviously one issue which is going to be the really key thing for us all over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years is our economy. And I can pledge to everybody, not only as Deputy Leader of the Labour Group, but as the Chair of the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee, one of my top priority, if not my top priority for the foreseeable future, is to do all we can to get our economy working again and to recover from where we are. And I also pledge that I will work with all groups, irrespective of party, to actually ensure that we can do the best we possibly can with our resources and our influencing structure to help rebuild Maidstone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Harper. Thank you very much. I'd like to now move to Councillor Powell, leader of the Independent Maidstone Group.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, I'll just keep my talk brief and just echo the words of all my fellow kind of leader colleagues here tonight. It is an absolutely horrendous time that we've come through. Probably the worst in most people's lifetimes, if not all of our lifetimes. And the way that the council and the various groups have actually stood side by side to help people. The amount of help that's gone on is just beyond anything I've ever known. And also to see so many new friendships made as well within the borough is absolutely wonderful. And, you know, I always think that during, you know, times of trials and tribulations, that's when we see the real character within the British community. And I'm proud of that, whether I be in Maidstone or across the whole country. I think people can really, I'm not saying pat themselves on the back, that would be wrong, but the help, assisting, you know, people knocking on doors. You know, I've seen all sorts of things when I've been out working with local community groups, you know, how people that have actually lived next door to people for years and years, and all of a sudden they're knocking on the door to make sure that they've got enough to eat. I mean, it's really, really humbling. But I would just like to say thank you to the people of Maidstone for the way that they've conducted themselves. Thank you to all the businesses all the support services and every single person connected with Maidstone Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. I will now open up this item to questions from council members of a period of 15 minutes. Questions must relate to the issues raised by the leader and the other group leaders in their speeches. They will be answered as directed by the questioner and will not require response from all group leaders. Thank you. No one's indicating? Councillor Pearl?
It's a kind of question, Madam Mayor, but might I just ask Councillor Harper to note our thanks from these benches for his thoughtful comments tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Mumford?
Yes, hope I can get this into a question. I've just heard a lot of good speeches, and as we come out of lockdown, come through this, my volunteer group are still working with elderly people and vulnerable groups that have decided that they want to remain in lockdown. And really, this is a plea, just could our voluntary groups continue to look for those people that are not happy or comfortable coming out of lockdown and continue to support them. Make that into a question how you wish, but
I think I can accept that, Councillor, because I think you make a great point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish?
Well, shall I answer the question?
Go on then.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Mumford. I know that you were certainly one of the first councillors to form almost a sub-hub in Bolton-on-Chelsea, and I know that your distribution on sunny Sundays to about 120 people, 120 houses of elderly, needy and shielded people in your area went down very well. And I know that you will be looking out, certainly through your own network, to support these people as and when they need it. But it does give me a very good chance to actually put forward an idea, and that is due to the amazing support that people seem to drop everything, and in various streets, let alone residents associations, Facebook groups formed, and I hoped they were going to be as true to their word, and they surpassed themselves. And I wonder whether it's a chance for us to almost form some sort of support network on an official basis to come to the fore when other things, perhaps less important or less striking as this pandemic has been. But I think it may be something that that the COVID recovery group could look at, because I know certainly from a couple of the service clubs and service organisations that they are very willing to partake of this, because I think if you look across the world, we see various organisations who drop everything and come to the aid of whoever. But I think where we've seen so much amazing support from our local groups, and they've turned out to just be the residents, and as has been said, people knocking on the doors of people right near to them. They might have never spoken to them, but suddenly they are, and I think it's a brilliant idea, Steve. I would certainly like to take it forward, and I know I've spoken briefly to Councillor Vizard about this as well, but thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Mumford. I'm kind of repeating what Councillor Cox has already said. I think you raised a very good point, because there's still a lot of people, certainly in my ward, who are still, I think, what I would call in lockdown, semi-lockdown. And I have to say, I include myself in that, because I have a medical condition that you, Madam Mayor, know very well, and I cannot, at the moment, it's difficult for me to go out. But and we certainly in my ward, the emergency team is still in place, so they are still extremely active, and I think again it shows this community spirit, which I think is so important. So I thank you, Councillor Mumford, for raising this, because it's something I should have raised myself, but it's a very, very important point I think you raise. And could I just say one other thing, just to personally thank Councillor Harper for the very kind words he said regarding Councillor Wendy Hinder, who is very much missed in our group, of course, and I'm sure with everybody. And thank you very much for your very, very kind words. It's very nice. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I just come in there, please, and just say that I don't want anybody to think that the hub has disappeared because lockdown is being eased. Mr. Ryan O'Connell said to me only yesterday that we had delivered another parcel to somebody, and our mayor's officers, Russell and Ray, are now doing the deliveries because they've gone down from maybe 30 odd a day to, as we said, just one. But we are still there. The facility is still there within our own premises, and the boxes are ready to go, and we're there ready to support the people should the need arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Bryce, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. May I just echo the comments and thank all the support workers, officers and contractors who've kept all our services going. And it was just really to say, if this hasn't been done already, would it be possible to have a short member consultation or a survey or some way of just gaining feedback on what worked really well and anything we would do differently? God forbid this would happen again. But I know there are lessons to be learned in terms of, what worked and maybe what didn't. So maybe that's something we could take forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Madam Mayor, if I just say we will add that to the COVID recovery sounding board's list of items to check up on and to catch. Thank you.
Just bear with me. I think there's someone else who wants to ask a question. Councillor Brian Clark, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think this is an excellent point. When we started, we actually started the volunteer service before lockdown in North Lewes, and very quickly got 50 volunteers, and it was really getting the letters out to people with telephone numbers on them. And that was actually we were getting lots of volunteers coming in, younger volunteers through Facebook and social media, but the actual need was coming in on phone calls, and that link that we set up actually very effectively at the hub, that the hub set up a ward by ward breakdown of all the volunteer services, including our own. And I think there is a little bit of a sentiment. Come July the 4th, I did have some people saying, what will you be doing after July the 4th? Well, we, the same as many of the other groups, are still very much in the thick of it, because we've got lots of shielding people. We've got lots of people that are starting to venture to town, but there are many others that wouldn't even contemplate that at the moment. So I really do think that resource on the website showing where the volunteer groups are, and we need to carry on making those opportunities to let people know that we are still here. And I do know that the hub has scaled back. It's scaled back to just a single day for the last few weeks. But we still got all of those relationships, and we're very much keen to keep them going as long as we need to.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Madam Mayor, if I just add that I know the hub is still functioning, the phone lines are still there, and I believe the main supermarkets, if we request anybody who rings in and has had difficulty trying to get a slot for delivery of food that they obviously pay for, I believe we are being given priorities. We have a special line for each. I believe if there could be confirmation maybe from the Chief Executive on that, because I believe that's in place.
Thank you. Chief, is it?
There you are. It's a yes from the Alison Broom in the IM messaging.
Lovely.
obviously hasn't been in makeup for hours, as I have.
Thank you. That was the last of anybody asking any questions. Thank you. Items 13 to 18. I will read out the agenda item and then call upon the member who will be moving the recommendations. I will ask for a seconder, with members going through instant messaging or indicating verbally. And the first one to signal will be the seconder. The seconder will be asked if they wish to speak or reserve their rights. I will then advise members of the list I have received by instant message of those members. Where am I? Sorry, everybody. Right. Wishing to speak, and then ask if there are any other members who wish to speak. There might be members who have dialed in. It is intended that voting be conducted by first establishing the need for the vote. If there is no dissent, then a vote is not needed. If one councillor dissents, we will go through the named but not recorded voting process we have been using at the committee meetings, unless 5 members of the council request a recorded vote by instant messaging or verbally in the debate. If a vote is required, I will ask the facilitator to go through the list of members in alphabetical order and ask them for their vote, which could be for, against, or abstain. If there is no response, it will be assumed that the member is not present. I will have a second or casting vote regardless of whether I use my first vote. The Democratic Service Officer will be asked to confirm the results of the vote, and I will announce the decision. I just hope that you all understood all their words. Very long, very long. And it's not. Okay. So can I go to item 14? Oh no, sorry. Item 10, item 13, page. I call upon Councillor David Burton to move the recommendation of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee relating to the Local Development Scheme 2020 to 2022, recommendations on page 17.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council, I'm bringing before you the matter of the Local Development Scheme for adoption this evening. As I'm sure you're all aware, this is the timetable for the delivery of the review of the local plan through to its conclusion. It is a statutory requirement that we publish this, and failure to have it in place potentially would place the council in special measures with regard to local plan making. Before moving on, can I draw your attention to a minor error? On page 24 at the very bottom, it indicates February 2020, and this should in fact be February 2021. So when I come to move the recommendation, it will be on that amended basis. I'd also like to make a supplement to the reasons for recommendation, because I think this is material. So that it says in the reasons for recommendation, the Maidstone Borough local plan, that's our current plan, includes a commitment to review the plan by April 2021, policy LPR1. I think this should be recorded verbatim for the minutes as a supplementary sentence. The April 2021 commitment was superseded by the NPPF update in 2018, requiring local authorities to review their local plans every 5 years. Therefore, the end date for the review is October 2022, and I believe that that is material to adoption this evening. The timescale for the local plan is ferocious. I'm sure you're all aware of that, and the pace at which it's going to move to meet the deadline, and failure to meet the deadline would potentially mean us losing control of planning applications in the borough. I hope that our officers will be raising this issue with the Mandarins in Whitehall as well when they hold their meeting, because in any allowance that we could gain to give us more time for the plan making would be really, really useful. But the timetable will be ferocious, and I hope that we'll all be participating. So without further words, I move that the Local Development Scheme 2020 to 2022 with the amendment on page 24 be approved.
Could I second that, please, as Vice Chair?
It's already been seconded. It's been seconded by Councillor Clive English. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? If not, is the recommendation agreed without the need for a named vote?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, everybody. Item 14. I call upon Mrs. Gooch to move the recommendation of Democracy and General Purpose Committee relating to memberships of committees. Recommendation on page 27. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. You may recall, members, that this was to do with the membership of the Licensing Committee and the Planning Committee, and I therefore move the recommendation as shown on the papers on page 27.
Is that Councillor Perry is seconded, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Is the recommendation agreed without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much, everybody. I call upon Councillor Gooch again to move the recommendation of Democracy and General Purpose Committee related to the amended Constitution of 2020 to 2021. Recommendation on page 29.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I make the recommendation, I would like to thank the staff, the Democratic Services staff, particularly Ms Snook, for the very hard work that she's put into all this, and in fact all members have, but I really do appreciate it, and I do believe that Councillor Pearl had a little hand in there somewhere, so I thought you deserved a mention as well. And I move the recommendation as set out on the papers. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's seconded by Councillor Jonathan Pearl. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Pearl?
I'd reserve my position.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Mackay, you wish to speak?
I do, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. With one exception, I would agree with this line. But clearly, I hope you've all seen the proposed amendment I wish to make to this. And the purpose of the amendment is to ensure that, like we have this evening, we have a fully engaged council meeting. Item 10 on the agenda was questions from members of the public. All council leaders, Mr Perry, Faye Gooch, Eddie Powell, myself, responded to those questions. If this went through as is, we would not have the opportunity at council to respond. This can't be right. This cannot be democratic. I understand why the changes were made to the committees, and that's quite right. But to deny the public a response from leaders must be wrong. It's probably one, like I say, it's probably one of the most engaging parts of council meetings when the public ask a question and they get sometimes a variety of responses. Do we really want to leave it that they only get one response, and that is from, invariably, most questions go to the chairman of PNR, Martin Cox? I think, in the name of democracy, please think again on this one. Like I say, I would like to see council staying as is. Leaders are very respectful of the time, and if there is lots of questions, we've tended to either keep our responses to the minimum and to keep them brief. So I would like to move the amendment as you've seen.
Can I ask?
Yes.
Can I ask if that's seconded, please?
Yes, it is, Madam Mayor.
Do you wish to speak?
Yeah, just really to echo Councillor Mackay's words. I mean, it was only a year ago where I think it was actually Councillor Mackay then said it seems very strange that we're not getting any questions from the public. So I think if there's a contentious issue, and obviously the garden villages are contentious, you will get a number of speakers on something like this. But more often than not, apart from the occasional pressure group, we don't tend to get that many speakers. And I think it's only right that we get, points of view from everybody, even if everybody's agreeing with each other or whatever. And so in my view, in the name of democracy, really, I think that we just ought to keep it the way that it is. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor English, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Only
Thank
the
you.
amendment. I'm in support of the rest of the document. My view is that, tiresome though it sometimes be when everyone is in agreement, which can happen, or when you're listening to a fifth speech from a leader on the same subject, in a council like ours, which has historically over decades represented a wide range of political opinion, that it would be unfortunate to actually restrict the answers to members of the public to one political group, whatever that political group is. As you've heard from people this evening, even when we're in agreement, there can be points brought up that are valuable and add to the perspectives of the council. I think as a matter of principle and as a matter of practice that this particular amendment should pass because it is fair and actually it does involve more members of the public across Maidstone than would otherwise be the case. I'm happy with the rest of the report, however.
Thank you,
Madam
very
Mayor.
much. Councillor Powell, will you wish to speak?
I would, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
There are, I believe, two ways of looking at MBC's current arrangements here. The first is to look at factors like the efficiency of our meetings and the accountability of the people who make the decisions. When a member of the public, or indeed a councillor, asks a question at our meeting, thanks to the nature of our committee system of governance, nobody's actually answering as the decision maker. When Martin reads all those sort of well-written answers, those are answers written by officers on behalf of the council more widely. And with respect to Martin and the committee chairs, and as much as I like to blame them for things, they give answers as spokespersons for the wider council, not as decision makers in the way that they would do if they were cabinet members. So while there should be a sort of role for alternative decision makers here, I don't know. I honestly wish it was different, but of course, as we all know, it's not. The second point is look at what are ostensibly this council's political groups. I believe I've sort of got within our sort of group on this side, I've got a sort of more or less sort of unique view on the council. Now, I think it should be wound up, for example. I'm pretty sure I could possibly muster 3 mates to support me in that view, but I don't get an opportunity to pontificate on the questions from the general public when they roll up and to give that view. Indeed, there are 24 of us on this side with a variety of views on all sorts of things, yet we get one voice from Councillor Perry, bless him. Likewise, there are 20 members from the Lib Dem benches, but they only get one voice in meetings like this, and that's often Councillor Cox reading the officer answers. We don't get to hear Councillor English or Councillor Nagy or any of these sort of various factions I suspect exist on the Lib Dem benches, giving us their respective views, despite what I suspect are their sort of various levels of support. Then there's sort of Councillor Mackay and his 3 mates. There's Councillors Eddie and Gordon, who I love dearly, but when it comes to sort of these questions, they get an equal voice with the Conservative and Liberal groups, who win far, far more votes and far more seats on this council. Now, with respect, if Councillor Mackay wants more of a say in the running of this council, instead of relying on provisions like this, he really needs to sort of get out there and try winning a few more votes and seats. Until then, they've got 4 seats, 7% of seats, and despite having a party apparatus behind them. So why they deserve all this airtime, far more than the vast majority of us, is beyond me. So with respect, members, I'd urge you to vote against this amendment.
Councillor Matt Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shan't go on for long because I believe that Councillor Pearl has more than adequately rounded up my views on the matter. I would just like to leave members with a thought that this ought not to be framed in terms of a proposal being amended in favour of democracy. It in fact would be undemocratic, as Councillor Pearl points out, to give an overweighted voice to groups on this council that are not democratically supported to the same degree as the larger groups. If Councillor Mackay's plea had been framed in terms of the interest of promoting debate, I could perhaps agree with his argument, but would nonetheless still not support this amendment on the basis that this council is here, as Councillor Pearl points out, to make decisions and not to act as some kind of an extension to a BBC general election night debate panel.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fundamentally, what the purpose is of a council meeting is to represent the diverse people who live within Maidstone and work within Maidstone, both urban and rural, and all of our diverse communities. The proposal or amendment before us tonight seeks to support democracy in terms of the way we run council meetings, not committee meetings where most of our decisions are made. In full council, the public look to that, to listen to the views of the various groups they elect to Maidstone. And we have a council currently with 5 political groups, each of whom has a valid point to make. And our council works best when all groups make their points and we find consensus. I find it very strange, the fact that the largest group on the council wishes no longer to have a voice on the council. The Conservatives are always telling us that they're the largest group, and yes, mathematically they are. However, if they object to our amendment tonight, they will be ceasing to give themselves the ability to respond to questions at all future meetings of Maidstone Council. That to me seems a bit ludicrous from the largest party. And we seem to be looking at a gagging process where only the elected leader of the council, who could be from any of the 5 groups, has a single say at these meetings. I think we also need to understand, in terms of Councillor Pearl's last comment, well, I expect us to find in 2021, after the local elections, based on opinion polls and where the country seems to be heading at the moment, likely that we will have a much enlarged Labour group sitting on either the benches of the council or on Skype conferences. And I think you will find changes which will come through as a result of public perceptions and reactions to various national issues going on there. So
Thank you, Councillor Harper.
Everybody to support the amendment to ensure continuing democracy and really a voice for the Conservatives, if nobody else.
Councillor Perry. Councillor Perry? Councillor Perry? I'm ever so sorry, I'm not having much luck here getting hold of Councillor Perry.
You have now. Sorry,
Oh, good.
screwing me up.
Sorry, good.
I just wanted to thank Councillor Harper for the party political broadcast on behalf of the Labour Party. Very interesting, but not terribly factual in my view. There's a lot of talks about democracy. How can it be democratic to have a group of two, sorry Eddie, but I have to say this, a group of two to have the same representation as a group of 24? That's not democratic at all. It's ridiculous. If we had 6 members speaking against, say, 1 for the group of 2, you might say that might be slightly fairer. But the point about all this is we have a committee system, and when Councillor Cox speaks, he's speaking as chair of the Policy and Resources Committee, which is a politically balanced committee under this system. Or as you just heard, you heard Councillor Burton speaking on behalf of the Spy Committee, which again is politically balanced. So they are politically balanced. So we have that allowed. So when Councillor Cox speaks, he's speaking for all those members of the Policy and Resources Committee. So the idea that this would be democratic to have a small group who can speak for the same as a large group is quite frankly ludicrous, and I think this should be rejected. I'm happy to support the proposal originally put forward by the Democracy Committee, which was discussed, I would say, at length in the Democracy Committee. So I support Councillor Gooch and Councillor Pearl, their proposal. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. I would now like to ask Councillor Mackay to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am somewhat disappointed and surprised at the Conservatives' response to this. It almost smacks of, if I can't have the toys, no one can have the toys. I think, and the reason I say that is, I think this meeting this evening, item 10, the questions from members of the public, was better for having the contributions that were made by all the leaders. And may I correct something, that it isn't necessarily the leaders that have to give the response. We all as leaders can ask a member of our group to respond to the question. So if a leader does not choose to you to respond, then ask your leader. Mr. Harper, Councillor Harper responded on behalf of the Labour group to one of the questions. And I don't think we are in danger of making our meetings even further boring than they already are.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Mackay. Can I now go to the vote for the amendment from Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Atkinson.
For.
Councillor Bartlett.
Against.
Councillor Blackmore.
Against.
Councillor Bryce.
Against.
Councillor Brindle.
Against.
Councillor David Burton.
Against.
Councillor Matt Burton.
Against.
Councillor Chapel-Tay. Councillor Chapel-Tay. I'll come back. Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Cumming.
Against.
Councillor Daly.
For.
Councillor English.
For.
Councillor Eves.
Against.
Councillor Fermor.
For.
Councillor Fissenden. Councillor Fissenden.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fort.
Against.
Councillor Garland.
Against.
Councillor Chapel-Tay has indicated a vote against via the instant messaging. Councillor Garton.
Against.
Councillor Gooch.
Against.
Councillor Grigg.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Name of democracy, for.
Councillor Harvey.
For.
Councillor Hasty.
Against.
Councillor Hinder.
Against.
Councillor Joy.
For.
Councillor Kadka.
For.
Councillor Kemments.
For.
Councillor Lewins.
For.
Councillor Mackay.
For.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Against.
Councillor Mortimer.
For.
Councillor Munford.
Against.
Councillor Nagy.
For.
Councillor Parfitt-Reed.
Against.
Councillor Perry.
Oh, lost it again. Oh, God.
I can hear you, Councillor Perry.
I got it.
Could you repeat that, please, Councillor Perry?
Oh, dear.
I can hear you.
Why is it? Oh, against. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Powell.
For.
Councillor Pearl.
Against.
Councillor Ring.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
For.
Councillor Margaret Rose.
For.
Councillor Round.
Against.
Councillor Janetta Sams.
For.
Councillor Tom Sams.
For.
Councillor Spooner.
Against.
Councillor Springett.
Against.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
Councillor de Wiganine Shepherd.
Against.
And Councillor Young.
Against.
That concludes the voting. Thank you, Chairman.
Debbie, can I ask you to sum up the voting, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm just counting them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was 23 in favour and 27 against.
Thank you. So the amendment fails. So now we go back to the original motion. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? So can we go to the vote, please? Is the recommendation agreed about the need for a named vote?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Oh, sorry. I've got...
Two against. Three against.
Councillor Harper is against this, so now we will have to go back to a name vote.
Thank you, members. I will try to move at a bit more pace this time. Councillor Atkinson.
Against.
Councillor Bartlett.
For.
Councillor Blackmore.
For.
Councillor Bryce.
For.
Councillor Brindle.
For.
Councillor Burton. Sorry, David Burton.
For.
Councillor Matt Burton.
For.
Councillor Chapel-Tay.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Cumming.
For.
Councillor Daly.
Against.
Councillor English.
Against.
Councillor Eaves.
For.
Councillor Fermor.
Against.
Councillor Fissenden.
Against.
Councillor Fort.
For.
Councillor Garland.
For.
Councillor Garton.
For.
Councillor Gooch.
For.
Councillor Grigg.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Harvey.
Against.
Councillor Hasty.
For.
Councillor Hinder.
For.
Councillor Joy.
Against.
Councillor Kadka.
Against.
Councillor Kimmins.
Against.
Councillor Lewins.
Against.
Councillor Mackay.
Against.
Councillor McLaughlin.
For.
Councillor Mortimer.
For.
Councillor Munford.
For.
Councillor Nagy.
Against.
Chairman, as a point of order, this is Brian Clark. I made an error in my voting. Can I change that to against?
Too late.
No, no,
Too
you've
late.
already
Too
done
late.
your vote.
Councillor Parfitt Reid.
For.
Councillor Perry.
For.
Councillor Powell.
Against.
Councillor Pearl.
For.
Councillor Ring.
For.
Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Councillor Margaret Rose.
Against.
Councillor Round.
For.
Councillor Janetta Sams.
Against.
Councillor Tom Sams.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
For.
Councillor Springett.
For.
Councillor Vizard.
Against.
Councillor Webb.
For.
Councillor de Wigadeen Shepherd.
For.
And Councillor Young.
For.
Thank you. That concludes the voting. Thank you, Chairman.
Would you do that for me?
Could we have the result, please, Debbie?
Just counting, Mr. Facilitator. Thank you. That's 30 in favour and 20 against.
That's passed. So that is now being carried. Thank you, councillors. I now go on to item 17. Oh, sorry, 16. I'll call upon Councillor David Burton to move the recommendation of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee relating to the Marden Neighbourhood Plan, Regulation 19, recommendation on page 36. Thank you, Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before moving the recommendation, this is a neighbourhood plan brought forward in my own ward, and I'm sure you would join me, all councillors, in congratulating and thanking everybody that's been involved with producing this neighbourhood plan, all the many thousands of hours of work that go into taking it through to a referendum where it had overwhelming support. So our thanks and appreciation to those involved. Quite simply, I move, as per the papers, that the Marden neighbourhood plan be made. That is, that it is adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Burton, and it's already been seconded by Councillor Sue Gregg. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, is the recommendation agreed without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much, everybody. Now we'll go on to item 17. I'll call upon Councillor Mortimer to move the recommendation of the Communities Housing Environment Committee, acting as the Crime and Disorder Committee, relating to the 2019-2020 Strategic Assessment and Revised Community Safety Plan. Recommendation on page 38. Thank you. Councillor Mortimer.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. If I say a few words before I move the recommendation, is that members, you may have noted that there isn't a reference to COVID-19 in the Community Safety Plan. The plan was prepared prior to the outbreak and based on trends and data of the previous 12 months. We know that COVID-19 has an impact on 5 priority areas, and this will be considered in the delivery of the safety plan in the coming months. The acute impact of COVID will be picked up in these plans going forward with the live response to the crisis. As you probably all aware, we've actually seen quite a large increase in domestic abuse, which is very sad. But the partners have been adapting to provide victims and empower survivors through this trauma. The partnership also continued to work throughout the lockdown to support and protect young people and engage with those at risk and are responding to increased levels of antisocial behaviour and nuisance, which is relatively high throughout the whole of the crisis. As with any emergency, we know the recovery phase is often longer than the crisis itself because of its broader impacts. The safety SMP through the community safety plan will remain agile to the pressures created by the coronavirus and ensure Maidstone remains safe, a place to live, to work, to learn and to visit. And personally, I'd like to offer my thanks to our wonderful officers, our outreach teams, etc., who've done a fantastic job at this time. So I move the recommendation on page 38 that the revised April 20 revision of the Community Safety Plan 2019-22 be adopted. Thank you.
And it's already been seconded by Councillor Ashley Kimmins.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Thank you. Is the recommendation agreed without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
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 Thank you very much, everybody. Now to item 18, reported. I call upon Councillor Mrs. Gooch to move the recommendation of Democracy and General Purpose Committee relating to the extension of the appointment of the, so where my other papers are gone, independent person recommendation on page 62 is.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And I have to say, I'm wondering if this report will generate as much debate and interesting words. Well, it has been an interesting evening, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
But, yeah, but certainly this report is short, sharp and sweet. It is in line with our general approach for extending roles and responsibilities through to May 21. So I'm therefore happy to make the recommendation as set out on page 62 of your papers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Richard Webb has seconded this. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? So are the recommendation agreeing without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
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 Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 19, there is no report from the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee this evening. Item 20, there is no report from the Economic Regeneration and Leisure Committee this evening.
Madam Mayor, I would like to report back on last night's meeting.
No, I'm sorry. I'm ever so sorry, Councillor Harper, but no, it has to be sent in, I'm afraid. So there's no report to come from your committee.
Why does it say if any then?
Sorry?
Sorry, Madam Mayor. Why does it say at the end of the line of item 20, if any?
Can I say something, Madam Mayor? The item.
Yeah, I would like Debbie, who's our officer for this, she'll explain to you why.
We include items of possible reports from meetings that have taken place between the agenda being published and this meeting in the event of there being a recommendation from that committee that needs a decision.
Thank you, and that's the purpose of the item.
Thank you.
So can I now move on then, please? So item 21, a lovely thing to be doing at the moment, appointment of Deputy Mayor. In accordance with the agreed protocol to guide members when they're appointing the Deputy Mayor, the most senior member of the Council, as set out in the order of seniority by length of service of members who have not previously held the office of Mayor, who wishes to take up the office and who have served for a minimum period of 6 years, should be appointed to the position of Deputy Mayor. That member is Councillor Faye Gooch. I look now to Councillor Mumford to move, and Councillor Cox to second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members. Welcome to my shed. Often on occasions like this, the speaker starts with, I remember when. And really, I'm more pragmatic than that. I think to make such important decisions and appointments as this, we should judge people in the way they behave. And this gives us a good indication of how they will behave in the future. And of course, we need some form of criteria. Number one on my criteria, and I think we often miss this, would be, has she got all her marbles? Having spoken around by a slim majority, the answer to that is from the other members is yes. Next, I would look at, is she willing and able to represent us, which I think is important. She's asked me to nominate her, so she must be willing, so I can confirm Councillor Faye Gooch is up for it. Is she able? Well, as the independent member for Barmin and Thiessen for the past 12 years, Faye has represented that group of residents extremely well. And in addition, she has served on many of our committees, often as chairperson. Yeah, I think Faye is brilliant at representing those things that she feels are important. Leadership qualities, which is very important to me, being ex-services. During the time I've been on the council, Faye has been the leader of the independent group. For those that are not familiar with this, that is a group of oddballs that the council do not know what to do with and put in a group. They have one manifesto pledge. We will disagree, often and especially with each other. Anyone that can lead a group like that has my admiration, and Faye has done a fantastic job in keeping us apart and representing all the different views of the group. And yes, I think she does well there. Support to me is very important, and for the past 4 years, Faye has been a very supportive deputy mayor in our council. I think she's done a fantastic job, which I'm sure she will repeat again in support of Mariam. We could check this fact with Martin Cox, but how again, there again, 50% of you have been programmed not to believe anything Martin says, so I don't think we need to go there. Time and commitment, I think Faye puts us all to shame. The amount of committees, briefings, training sessions that we see Faye turn up to. She pops up everywhere. You could say, is she just nosy? No, I think she's committed and willing to put the time in. I've even seen her husband hanging around outside the town hall, waiting to see a glimpse of his wife. Peter, be careful. I think there's a legal definition for that now. My list finishes with enthusiasm. Faye can be enthusiastic about being enthusiastic. She can be enthusiastic about budget, audit, all things that I could never even get an interest in, let alone be enthusiastic. Most of all, and most importantly, Faye is enthusiastic about doing good things and helping people. I believe that Faye will make an excellent deputy mayor, and I believe she will go on to make a fantastic mayor for Maidstone. And I hope you agree with me, because I'd like to move, this is where the official bit gets, and I've got to get me a bit of paper, that Councillor Faye Lynette Gooch be duly appointed Deputy Mayor for the Borough of Maidstone until the next annual meeting of the Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done, Councillor Mumford. Second, Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Normally, I would have leapt to my feet to be able to do this, and it's such a shame that we have to. Can we unmute Faye, because she's roaring with laughter and we can't hear it, and I think an element of realism is needed here. I'm sure she won't be laughing after mine, but anyway, it does give me great pleasure and an honour to be able to second Faye for this position. Steve has brought out some of the amazing reasons for Faye to be put forward for this. But I think we should always consider, if you want somebody to do something, ask a busy person. I'm sure her husband doesn't ever see her, and now he'll have to be in a car with her, going to whatever occasion might be needed. So I do think actually this is one way of getting her to realise, or certainly Peter will, realise what she does within the council. Because when she is mayor, she will not be able to do all the things that we ask of her. And as leader for the last 2 years, she has carried on what she's done for the previous 2 years, sitting on the Police and Crime Board and going to health meetings for me. And actually, whenever I want to be happier than I may be and to have a smile on my face, at the moment I pick up the phone or Skype and speak to Faye, because she always answers with a bubbly manner. And I know that wherever she goes in the borough to represent us, she will bring that to every corner of the borough. Bubbly, enthusiastic, pleasant, ladylike. And I could go on. Well, steady. Oh. You were wobbling with your nod earlier. So anyway, all I will say is I couldn't be more delighted to nominate Faye for the position of Deputy Mayor, and I will hold off all the bad things and the reasons why she shouldn't for the potential AGM and placement as Mayor. So as Steve did earlier, I would like to second that Councillor Lynette Gooch be proposed to be Mayor of this borough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I call upon Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I won't repeat what's just been said. Just one small thing. I think there is an element of sadness in this appointment, yes, because, as we know, dear Councillor Wendy Hinder, but if anybody can succeed and take over from Wendy, then I believe Faye is the absolutely perfect person for this. Faye, you're one of life's enthusiasts, if I may use that word, and I say it with a compliment. And I remember when you did a stint actually chairing the audit committee, which Councillor Mumford has already alluded to, but I mean, you admitted you didn't know a lot about auditing, but actually you did an absolutely great job. You did a very good job. So I just wanted to wish you all the very best. I know you get involved in lots of things. I mean, you're still a very active parish councillor as well, yes, and you come to all the CALC meetings, as I know, and that's, it's a big work commitment, but you are one of life's enthusiasts, and I know you'll make a wonderful Deputy Mayor and Mayor. I'm sure of that, and you'll support Marion as well, which I know you will, yes, do, and that's very important. And yes, so I really wish you all the very, very best. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all my group in saying that. So, good luck and best wishes for the future. I'm sure we'll all benefit from having you around. Thank you very much, Faye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much. And I can't think of a job more suited to Faye than being Mayor. That this is so you, Faye, and you will make such an excellent Mayor. But Lynette, where did that come from?
It's anyway. My dad. My dad's fault.
Yeah. Steve Mumford assures us all that you've got all your marbles. I'll take his word for that. And can I just say, I became a councillor in 2012. I was the only Labour councillor, and Faye was one of those councillors, and there was lots of them, by the way, that tried to make me feel more comfortable. And so I got to know reasonably well, I suppose. Neither of us were part of big groups. Well, I wasn't a group, I was a Lone Ranger for a couple of years anyway. But we did get to know in 2015, for those councillors that are relatively new, I stood for leader at the annual general meeting, and Faye Gooch supported me.
Yeah, I did.
So here we have the odd couple, Malcolm Mackay and Faye Gooch. Both of us, in fairness, were of the opinion that we weren't too keen on either of the options from the two larger parties. Now, fortunately for Maidstone, I wasn't elected leader, but as a result of that, Faye was elected deputy leader to Fran Wilson in 2015. One that she wasn't entirely sure about at first, but she grew to like it. I think, and doing a very good job as deputy leader, and became and still remains deputy leader of the council. But not many people would have suspected that alliance, would they, Faye? Faye's keeping very quiet on that one.
Whoa. Lips are
Faye,
sealed.
yes, Faye, as I said, you are made to be mayor. You'll do a fantastic job of representing Maidstone. You will have fun. And I suspect you will actually manage to come out of it and not put on a bloody ounce of weight. My pleasure to nominate you as Deputy Mayor and future Mayor.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Powell.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm going to put the video on if I can get it to work. Yes, it's working, yeah. Faye, I mean, I've got one word written down on here, and that is enthusiasm. You've got to be the most enthusiastic councillor that has ever set foot inside the town hall or any of the meetings. I mean, you just smile all the time. Occasionally you might frown, but you still smile afterwards, and I think it's that smile that kind of brings warmth into meetings. It doesn't mean everybody always agrees, Faye, but it certainly brings a lot of warmth. And you're just a very enthusiastic person that brings, helps bring people out of their shells, helps them to be confident. You're a good leader, and I can just imagine you doing almost like a royal wave out the car as it pulls away from the various garden fetes and whatever else you're going to be attending. But I can't think of a better person to actually be a deputy mayor or a mayor to come. And hopefully, I say hopefully, I will see you doing that job and doing it well. Congratulations, Faye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Are there any other nominations? Is the motion agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
I will now ask the Deputy Mayor, who will make her declaration of acceptance of office.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The declaration of office is as follows. I, Faye Lynette Gooch, having been appointed to the office of Deputy Mayor for the Borough of Maidstone, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. Thank you. And I will be signing that in due course.
Thank you. I call on the Deputy Mayor who wishes to thank the Council for her appointment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Marion. I'm absolutely overwhelmed. When I asked the leaders of each of the groups to support my nomination, I said in the email, please just make it short because it's going to be virtual. It needs to be short. I've been absolutely blown away by what people have said. Thank you so much for your lovely words. I have to say, I have a slight heavy heart because I remember looking forward to being Deputy Mayor to dear Councillor Wendy Hinder and with Bob. And I can remember that my husband Peter, the four of us, we were at Mid-Kent College and the four of us were getting excited about how we were going to share the time together. So I hope that Wendy's looking down on me and smiling and waving. But I look forward, and in fact, actually, I look at the present first because I think it is a great honour to support Marion. Councillor Marion Ring, she's done a great job so far, and I really look forward to supporting her, doing everything I can to support her until May. And thank you, Marion. And I think it's been so weird, hasn't it, this year? And I know that you've missed out on some things, Marion, but I hope that somehow you can still carry on one way or another. But thank you very much, everybody. I'm quite touched, honestly. I really am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now go on to item 22. The procedures for reports from officers will be as I set out earlier, with the exception that I will read out the agenda item and then refer to the officer who will be presenting the report. After the report has been introduced, I will look to a member to move the recommendation. I will then look for a seconder with members going through instant messaging or indicating verbally, and the first one to signal will be the seconder. The seconder will be asked if they wish to speak or reserve their rights. Instant messaging, voting and other matters will work in the same way as for the reports from committees. So item 22, I call upon the Head of Policy, Communication and Governance to submit a report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Councillor Cox, please.
Must have gone home.
No, I believe it's Councillor Perry. Oh, sorry. I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry.
I thought I was seconding. That's absolutely fine. I would like to propose this motion, please.
Councillor Perry?
Thank you. I would certainly like to second it. I have just two minor amendments to make. You'll notice on the schedule that there is two appointments that are I think got TBC on it to be confirmed. And I'd like to propose that Councillor Anne Brindle is appointed to the licensing committee. And I know this is agenda 23, so maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I'd like Councillor Val Springett to be nominated for the Cobtree committee. So that the two committees are, there's two, agenda 22 and 23 are rather interlinked. So
okay.
But, I second it, and hopefully everybody can accept that. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. Are the recommendations agreed without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
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 Thank you. The Council is now acting as corporate trustee of the charity known as Cobtree Manor Estate. I call upon the Head of Policy, Communication and Governance to submit a report to the Council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to Council.
Thank you very much. And now, having turned the agendas page, I would like to propose this motion.
Thank you. And I'll second Councillor Perry.
Yes, I'd like to second it. Thank you very much. As I said before, the Councillor Springett as the to be nominated as the member, one of the two members on our side for the Cobtree committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Nope. So again, we go through, are the recommendations agreed without the need for a name vote?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you very much. Sorry, everybody. papers everywhere. Oh, thank you. The council is now acting as corporate trustee of the Queen's Own Royal West Kent Regiment Museum Trust. I call upon the head of Policy, Communication Governance to submit a report to the council.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. I commend the report to council.
Thank you. This report is for information only, so ask if it is agreed that the report be noted, and if there is no dissent, a name vote will not be taken.
Noted.
Noted. Noted.
Noted. Noted.
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you. So I now declare the meeting closed, and thank you very much everybody for taking part. It's been a very nice and quite open meeting, so thank you.
Thank you, Marion.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Marion.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Well done,
everyone.
Well done.
Thank you, Madam